Hi everybody, this is Lowell, and we're talking about understanding basic sound system design and how a sound system works. And so far we've talked about uh, the input signals and different types of cables and connections and so forth. But once you have your input signal, you're going to come into a mixer. And mixing boards can be quite complicated looking, but it's really no different um, than understanding just one channel. If you can understand one channel, then you can understand the whole mixing console. And this is just a traveling mixer that I had on hand, and just wanted to kind of go through the parts and pieces that we have here, and what a mixing console looks like. I'm sure most of you have seen this and worked with them before, but just so that you uh, get familiar with what it is if you haven't. So you can see that there are a number of channels. There's actually 8 channels here, and here's your microphone input and your line input, and you can switch between your mic and your line. And then here's your very simple basic EQ and a little button for reverb, and then your overall gain. So a mixing console, and that's just one channel. And so, you have all these other channels that are doing the same exact thing. So if you understand how one channel works, you can understand an entire mixing console. The other thing about mixing consoles that you really need to understand is they're a little bit like plumbing. And so uh, I know that plumbing is kind of a crude way of talking about mixing console, but really what happens is that you tap into certain places on that input signal, and it's a little bit like like my house has one water input from the alley, and then it splits off uh, to the laundry room. It splits off to the sink in the kitchen. It splits off to the bathrooms throughout the house, and so it's it's a little bit like that with electrical signal through a mixing console. Is that you're tapping into or pulling from uh, in certain places, certain areas. You're stemming off the signal to go somewhere else. And so one of the most common ways of doing this is what we call busing. And so busing is when you take an electrical signal that's coming in through a channel, like what we just talked about, we just showed, and you take that signal, and you can take it at different locations, at different places in the input chain, but you take that signal and send it over to a combined area. So let's say that channel one, we're sending some of that water through the lines over to mix, to bus number one. And then we have a channel two, and we're taking some of that signal over to bus number one. And then channel three, some of that signal over to bus number one. And so what happens is that I can actually just grab that one fader on bus number one and raise it and lower it. And basically, I'm able to raise the volume of a section of people, of participants, of signals that are coming into the mixing board. So this basically it's a way of clustering um, what players or inputs or sounds. You're grabbing a whole bunch of them and being able to control them through a mixing bus just with one fader. That's probably the most common. Another one would be, uh, say, if you wanted to add reverb to a group, you would do it the same way. You could do that with any types of effects, and I'll get into mixing effects, outboard effects on another video. But uh, that's really the main thing. It's about managing the input signals that are coming in before they're amplified, and sending them to different places. But if you can understand just one channel, then you don't have to be afraid of this big old honking mixing board that has 100 channels on it. Or these days, with electronic mixing consoles, it they look simple, but then there's all these layers of can have you know, 48, but up to, you know, over 100 channels on some boards. And so it can seem overwhelming, but it's really just, if you can just think about that one channel. So normally what you have is you have your input signal, and then they have what you call gain, which is how much signal is coming into the channel. And then you have your EQ, and various mixing consoles have, you know, like what I just showed you is extremely simple, you know, highs and lows, but you can have, you know, highs, mid highs, you know, a parametric EQ or a sweep, you know, across certain frequencies, and then lows or mid lows, lows, you know, that you can have several buttons, several knobs for EQ, and then you can have your routing for your mixing buses, and then you have your fader, which can go up and down. You can have, some of them have panning. Um, those are some basic functions on a channel, and so that's just an overview of a mixing console. And like I said, I'm sure a lot of you've worked with them, and it's very pretty much ubiquitous in our generation to work with mixing consoles. But that's just a little bit of an overview of what happens with a mixing board.